Years passed, and the lessons of the past began to fade in the heat of Babylonian pride. King Nebuchadnezzar, obsessed with his own shadow, commissioned a monument that would reach toward the heavens, a colossal image of gold on the plain of Dura.
The king looked upon his creation and saw not a god, but his own reflection. He decided that all people, from every nation and language, must acknowledge his greatness. The call went out to the ends of the earth. Satraps, prefects, governors, and advisors were summoned to the dedication of the image that the king had set up. They came from every province, representing every tongue. It was a gathering of the world's power, all forced to acknowledge the singular power of one man. A wall of sound was prepared, a melody designed to overwhelm the senses and break the will of the people.
The herald proclaimed, "Nations and peoples of every language, this is what you are commanded to do. When you hear the music, you must fall down and worship."
To reinforce the command, the king provided a terrifying alternative. Whoever does not fall down and worship will immediately be thrown into a blazing furnace.
The air vibrated with the sound of the zither and the harp. Under the weight of the king's law, the nations began to crumble.
A sea of humanity surrendered. In that moment, it seemed that the pride of Babylon had finally conquered the world. But three did not bow. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego stood alone, their eyes fixed on a king much higher than the one on the throne. Not everyone was blinded by worship. Certain astrologers, fueled by long-standing jealousy, saw their chance to destroy the foreigners who had been promoted above them. They came to the king with a poisoned greeting. "May the king live forever," they cried, before delivering the news of the rebellion.
"There are certain Jews whom you have set over the affairs of Babylon," they whispered. "They pay no attention to you, O king. They do not serve your gods or worship your image."
At the report of defiance, the king's peace was shattered. His pride was a tender wound, and Daniel's friends had touched it.
Furious with rage, Nebuchadnezzar summoned Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. The very men he had honored were now the targets of his wrath. They were brought before the most powerful man on earth. They walked as free men through a forest of spears, their hearts anchored in a truth Babylon could not understand.
"Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego?" the king demanded. "If you are ready to worship when the music plays, all is forgiven. But if you do not, the fire awaits."
Then the king uttered the words of ultimate pride. "What god will be able to rescue you from my hand?" They did not need time to deliberate. Shadrach replied, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us. He will rescue us from your hand, your majesty." "But even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up." Nebuchadnezzar was filled with fury, and the expression on his face changed. His pride could not fathom such a direct defiance of his absolute will. He gave orders to heat the furnace 7 times hotter than usual. He wanted the fire to match the intensity of his own burning hatred. The heat became so great that the air around the kiln began to ripple and distort. It was no longer a furnace. It was a gateway to destruction. He commanded some of the strongest soldiers in his army to tie them up. They were bound in their fine robes, their tunics, and their turbans, completely prepared for the fire. Because the king's order was so urgent and the furnace so hot, even the journey to the fire was a death sentence for those who carried them. The flames were so fierce they killed the very soldiers who took them up. In his haste for vengeance, the king had sacrificed his own best men. These 3 men, firmly tied, fell into the blazing furnace, but the fire had no power over the children of the Most High.
Then King Nebuchadnezzar leaped to his feet in amazement. He peered into the heart of the fire, unable to believe what his eyes were showing him.
"Weren't there 3 men that we tied up and threw into the fire?" he asked his advisors. "Look, I see 4 men walking around in the fire, unbound and unharmed."
And the 4th looks like a son of the gods. In the heart of the king's death trap, the Prince of Peace had come to walk with his own.
Nebuchadnezzar then approached the opening of the blazing furnace and shouted, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out, come here." So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the fire. They stepped from the mouth of death into the sight of the world, untouched by the flame.
The satraps and governors crowded around them. They saw that the fire had not harmed their bodies, their robes were not scorched, and there was no smell of fire on them.
Not a single thread was singed. The fire that had consumed the king's strongest soldiers had no power over those protected by the Almighty. Then Nebuchadnezzar said, "Praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and rescued his servants." The king issued a new decree. No other god can save in this way. Therefore, I decree that anyone who says anything against the God of these men shall be cut into pieces. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. Their trial by fire had become their testimony of triumph. King Nebuchadnezzar, to the nations and peoples of every language, may you prosper greatly. It is my pleasure to tell you about the miraculous signs that the Most High God has performed for me.
I looked, and there before me stood a tree in the middle of the land. Its height was enormous. The tree grew large and strong, and its top touched the sky. It was visible to the ends of the earth.
I saw a holy messenger coming down from heaven. He called out in a loud voice, "Cut down the tree and trim off its branches. Strip off its leaves and scatter its fruit.
But let the stump and its roots, bound with iron and bronze, remain in the ground. Let him be drenched with the dew of heaven, and let him live with the animals among the plants of the earth."
I was terrified. I commanded that all the wise men of Babylon be brought before me to interpret the dream, but once again, they could not tell me what it meant. Finally, Daniel came into my presence. Daniel, who is called Belteshazzar, after the name of my God. I told him the dream. Daniel was greatly perplexed for a time, and his thoughts terrified him. The king said, "Belteshazzar, do not let the dream or its meaning alarm you." Daniel answered, "My lord, if only the dream applied to your enemies. The tree you saw, it is you, your majesty. You have become great and strong. Your greatness reaches to the sky. This is the decree the Most High has issued against my lord the king. You will be driven away from people and will live with the wild animals. You will eat grass like the ox and be drenched with the dew of heaven. 7 times, 7 years will pass by for you until you acknowledge that the Most High is sovereign over all kingdoms on earth and gives them to anyone he wishes. Therefore, your majesty, be pleased to accept my advice. Renounce your sins by doing what is right. It may be that then your prosperity will continue." 12 months of mercy passed, but the king's heart remained a fortress of pride. As he walked upon the roof of his royal palace, the warning of the great tree was forgotten, buried under the weight of his own glory. He looked at the horizon and spoke to the wind. "Is not this the great Babylon I have built as the royal residence, by my mighty power and for the glory of my majesty?" Even as the boast left his lips,
a voice fell from heaven like a hammer. "This is what is decreed for you, King Nebuchadnezzar. Your royal authority has been taken from you."
In that very hour, the prophecy was fulfilled. The mind of the man who thought he was a god was stripped away, replaced by the spirit of a beast. He was driven away from people. The palace doors he had built for his glory were now closed to him, and the throne he worshipped sat empty and cold. For years he lived in the wild. His body was drenched with the dew of heaven, and the man who wore the finest silks of the world now had only the grass as his bed and the stars as his witnesses. His hair grew long and wild like the feathers of a bird, and his nails became like the claws of an eagle. The pride of Babylon was being ground into the dust. 7 times passed over him, 7 years of madness and silence, until the lesson of humility was carved into the very marrow of his bones. While the king was lost in the wild, Daniel kept the empire steady, watching and waiting. He knew the great tree's stump was bound with iron, but he also knew it was still alive. At the end of that time, Nebuchadnezzar raised his eyes toward heaven. In that moment of surrender, his sanity was restored, and the king finally saw the king. At the end of that time, I, Nebuchadnezzar, raised my eyes toward heaven, and my sanity was restored. Then I praised the Most High. I honored and glorified him who lives forever. My honor and splendor were returned to me for the glory of my kingdom. My advisors and nobles sought me out, and I was restored to my throne. The man who returned to the palace was not the same man who had been driven from it. The beast was gone, and a king of peace had taken his place. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and exalt and glorify the King of heaven, because everything he does is right, and all his ways are just. And those who walk in pride, he is able to humble. This was the final testimony of the greatest king of Babylon. The fire had passed, the madness had ended, and for a season, the light of the true God shone brightly over the blue walls of Babylon. Daniel had seen kings fall and rise. He knew that his journey through the halls of power was far from over, for the heart of man is fickle, and the cycle of pride would soon return. The pride of man is a tree that must fall, but the mercy of God is a root that can always sprout anew. The great king slept with his fathers, leaving behind an empire that had seen the power of the Most High. But his successor would not walk in his footsteps. A new king arose, Belshazzar, who would mock the God of Daniel. The stage was set for the final judgment of Babylon. Years later, the throne of Nebuchadnezzar was occupied by his successor, Belshazzar. He was a king who valued gold over God and pleasure over the hard-won wisdom of the past. Under the influence of wine, Belshazzar gave orders to bring in the gold and silver goblets that his predecessor had taken from the temple in Jerusalem. The holy vessels of the Most High were treated as common toys. The king and his nobles drank from them, mocking the God of Israel, while praising the gods of gold and silver. Suddenly, the fingers of a human hand appeared and wrote on the plaster of the wall near the lampstand in the royal palace. The king watched the hand as it wrote. His face grew pale, and he was so frightened that his legs became weak and his knees were knocking. The bravest man in Babylon was reduced to a trembling child. The king called out for his wise men, but no one could read the writing or tell the king what it meant. The wisdom of Babylon had failed. Seeing the king's terror, the queen mother came into the banquet hall. She remembered a man who had been forgotten by the new generation. "There is a man in your kingdom who has the spirit of the holy gods in him," she said. And so the elderly Daniel was brought before the king. The king offered him wealth and power, but Daniel wanted none of it. He had seen the end of one king's pride, and he knew he was looking at the end of another's. This is the inscription that was written:
Daniel said, "Mene, God has numbered the days of your reign and brought it to an end. Tekel, you have been weighed on the scales and found wanting."
Perez, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. The sentence was passed. The empire of gold had reached its final hour.
That night, the impossible happened. The river was diverted, and the Persians entered the city through the very water gates the king had trusted.
The celebration became a massacre. The walls that had seen the pride of Nebuchadnezzar now witnessed the judgment of his son. That very night, Belshazzar, king of the Babylonians, was slain.
Babylon had fallen. A new era had begun, and the elderly Daniel found himself once again serving a foreign king in a changing world.
The dream was moving forward. The gold had passed. The silver had arrived. But for Daniel, the greatest test of his faith was still waiting in the shadows. Join us for the final chapter of this epic journey. The law of the Medes and Persians is written, and the lions are hungry. Part 3. The Lion's Den. If you're inspired by Daniel's unwavering faith in the face of the fire and the madness, subscribe and hit the bell for Part 3. What's your biggest takeaway from Nebuchadnezzar's journey? Did his restoration surprise you? Let us know in the comments below. Share this story with someone who needs to be reminded that no fire is too hot and no valley is too deep for God to reach you. Stay stunningly serene.
Until next time, remember, you are seen, you are loved, and your story is held in the faithful hands of God. God bless you, and we'll see you in the next story.